Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take the mass of the crucible and lid. So we're going to place the crucible and lid on the balance. And when it finishes fluctuating, you'll take that mass. So the mass, if you look to see where the decimal is and that we're in grams, is 63.422 grams for the crucible and the lid. Then we added some copper sulfate hydrate into our crucible, and our new mass is 67.620. So that's the mass of the crucible, the lid, and the hydrate. So the next thing we're going to do is to heat our crucible with our copper sulfate in it. We're going to heat it slowly at first and then heat it hot for about 15 minutes. We're going to want the bottom of your crucible to glow kind of orange to know that it's strong enough to drive those waters out of that crystal lattice. We're going to heat it slowly at first and then we'll come back and look at it. So the salt's heating. If you listen, you can kind of hear like maybe it's sizzling. So it's really the water coming out. So we're gonna let it heat, like I said, for about 15 minutes and we'll come back and check on it. So if you kind of peek over in there, you can see that the outside of the crystals where it's the hottest is turning white. So this is a hydrate that actually changes colors when the water leaves, right? And if we look at the bottom, we know we're heating it strong enough because we've got something under there glowing orange. That tells us that our system is hot enough, right? And we can actually see it changing when we look down in there. The blue is starting to disappear and we're starting to see white. Okay, so we heated for about 13 to 14 minutes. We put the lid on it because the whole purpose of this lab was to drive the water out of that crystalline structure. And since we live in the South, we know things are very humid here, so the salt could reabsorb the water. So we put the lid on it so that while it's cooling, it's not reabsorbing any water out of the atmosphere. After it cools down for about 10 to 15 minutes, we will get a new mass, and then it'll be the mass of the anhydrous salt. Anhydrous means no water. So we hopefully drove all the waters out. Okay, so we let it cool with the lid on it, and now we came over and got the mass of the anhydrous salt. Anhydrous means without water, and it's 65.975 grams. Okay, so now let's see what it looks like inside. And we can see that that bright blue color has changed. It still has a little bit of a blue hue, so it may be that we didn't heat it quite long enough. Let's go over and see what it looks like compared to what it was before we heated it. So here's the crystals before, and then there's the crystals after. You can see that the crystals before, right, are shiny. They're fairly translucent. We can see light coming through them. They kind of glow a little bit more. Those are bigger crystals of the same salt up here. Okay, and then this is the smaller ones that we heated. Over here now is what we heated, and we see that the crystals are much finer, right? They're more like a real fine powder, where over here they're still very granular. Okay, so the crystals actually shrank down in size individually, right? We got this white powder here. So they are different. So the crystals before heating are called the hydrate. Okay, so before heating, they're called the hydrate. And then after heating, they're called the anhydrous, meaning no water. Okay, so hydrate means with water, anhydrous means without. So I put the crystals back in the crucible, and we are going to carefully add some water and observe what happens to them. Oh, look, where I put the water, it turns back blue again. And we can kind of see some steam coming off there, meaning it's releasing heat, right? So the crystals are reabsorbing the water and turning back blue. And you can kind of hear it sizzle. And see the steam coming off of it? Okay, so the crystals, right, can reabsorb the water, and if you feel the bottom of this crucible, you would feel that it's actually hot again because it gave off heat as it's reabsorbing the water.